You walked into that room thinking you were just another person. You sat down, made small talk, maybe laughed at a joke you didn't find funny, and the whole time someone was running calculations on you that you didn't even know were possible. They clocked the way you looked down when you introduced yourself. They noticed how quickly you agreed when someone else changed the subject. They saw you check your phone twice in 3 minutes, not because you had messages, but because you needed somewhere to put your eyes. By the time you left, they had already decided what you were worth to them, and you never felt a thing. This is not paranoia. This is pattern recognition, operating at a level most people refuse to believe exists. There are individuals in this world who have trained themselves, consciously or through survival, to read weakness the way you read street signs. They do it automatically. They do it in seconds. And once they've identified what you're hiding, they own a piece of you that you didn't even know you'd given away. Today I'm going to show you exactly what they see. Not so you can become one of them, but so you can stop being their target. The first type of weakness that predators detect instantly is approval hunger. And before you tell yourself this doesn't apply to you, understand something. Approval hunger is not about wanting to be liked. Everyone wants to be liked. Approval hunger is about needing validation so badly that you will unconsciously sacrifice your own position to get it. The predator sees this in the way you phrase your opinions as questions. They see it when you laugh too quickly at jokes that aren't funny yet before the punchline lands because you're trying to sync up with the room. They see it when you mirror someone's body language not out of rapport building skill, but out of desperate hope that if you become like them, they'll accept you. Here's what approval hunger actually looks like in the wild. You're in a group conversation and someone makes a statement you disagree with. Not offensive, just wrong. You feel the disagreement rise in your chest, and then you feel something else, the fear of being seen as difficult. So you nod. You say something like, "Yeah, I can see that." And in that moment, a certain type of person files you away in a mental folder labeled controllable. They now know that your need for social harmony is greater than your commitment to your own perception of reality. That is an exploitable gap. That is a weakness you just advertised for free. The predator doesn't necessarily think in these exact terms. Most of them don't sit there running conscious calculations, but they feel it. They feel the subtle relief that washes over you when they approve of something you said. They feel your energy shift when they give you attention versus when they withdraw it. And once they feel that they know they can move you like a piece on a board simply by controlling the flow of validation, you'll work harder for them, you'll tolerate more from them. You'll make excuses for their behavior because somewhere in the back of your mind, you're still hoping they'll finally see you as valuable. The fix is not to become disagreeable. The fix is not to start arguments just to prove you have a spine. The fix is to recognize the internal sensation of approval hunger when it arises and to stop yourself from acting on it reflexively. When you feel the urge to agree with something you don't believe, pause. Not because disagreement is always right, but because agreement that comes from fear is always wrong. The goal is to reach a place where other people's approval feels nice but never necessary. When you're truly there, predators sense it, and they move on to easier prey. The second weakness that gets detected instantly is inconsistent frame. Your frame is the reality you project into an interaction. It's the story your body language, voice, and behavior tell about who you are and what you expect. Inconsistent frame means your signals don't match. You speak with confidence, but your eyes keep darting to check if people are buying it. You project authority, but you let someone interrupt you without consequence. You act like you don't care about the outcome, but then you over-explain yourself when challenged. These contradictions create a kind of static, a noise in your signal that tells sophisticated observers exactly where you're faking it. Let me give you an example you'll recognize. Imagine a guy at a social event who walks in with his chest out, shoulders back, taking up space. He's doing all the things he's been told communicate confidence. But then someone bumps into him and he apologizes profusely, even though it wasn't his fault. He tells a story, and when no one laughs, his voice gets quieter for the next few minutes. A woman he's interested in tests him with a playful insult, and his whole energy shifts to defense mode, trying to prove the insult wasn't accurate. Every one of those moments is a frame break. Every one of them tells the room that the confident exterior was a costume, not a reality. What predators understand about frame is that most people only have enough to maintain during smooth conditions. The real test is what happens under pressure, when things go slightly wrong, when someone pushes back, when the social script gets torn up. That's when your true frame emerges. And if your true frame is weaker than your projected frame, you've just handed observant people a map to your insecurities. They know exactly where to push. They know exactly what buttons exist because you showed them the moment you flinched. The way to develop consistent frame is not to rehearse more confident behaviors. It's to actually build internal alignment between who you're projecting and who you are when no one's watching. This takes time. It takes ruthless self-honesty about where you're still performing confidence versus actually possessing it. The man with consistent frame doesn't need to think about maintaining it. His behavior under pressure matches his behavior during calm moments because both emerge from the same source, genuine self-knowledge and acceptance of who he is. Predators feel this solidity, and they respect it, not out of morality but out of strategy. Solid frames are hard to crack. They look for easier targets. The third weakness that gets read immediately is overinvestment in outcomes. This one is subtle because society rewards caring about results. Work hard, want success, chase your goals. But there's a difference between wanting an outcome and needing it so badly that your behavior becomes transparent. When you overinvest in a particular result, you leak signals that tell everyone around you exactly what you're afraid of losing. And fear of loss is one of the most exploitable emotions in the human psyche. Watch a guy who overinvests in whether a woman likes him. He texts and then checks his phone every 2 minutes for a response. When she takes time to reply, he reads into the delay and adjusts his next message to seem less eager. When she's finally in front of him, he monitors her reactions constantly, trying to calibrate his behavior to maximize her positive responses. Every single one of these micro behaviors is visible to her. Not consciously, usually, but she feels something off. She feels the pressure of his need radiating through every interaction. And for predatory personalities, this kind of overinvestment is like blood in the water. They know they can jerk you around simply by threatening the outcome you've shown you can't live without. This applies far beyond dating. Overinvest in a job offer, and the hiring manager senses they can lowball you. Overinvest in a friendship, and the other person learns they can take you for granted without consequence. Overinvest in appearing intelligent, and someone will bait you into arguments just to watch you scramble. The common thread is that when you need something too visibly, you transfer power to whoever controls access to that thing. You make yourself manipulable by revealing what you can't walk away from. The counter strategy is not to pretend you don't care. Fake indifference is just as readable as real desperation. The counter strategy is to actually cultivate options and acceptance. Options means you have multiple paths to satisfaction, so no single outcome can break you. Acceptance means you've genuinely made peace with the possibility of not getting what you want. Together, these create a real freedom that shows in your behavior. You can want the job without needing the job. You can be interested in the person without being dependent on their response. This kind of freedom confuses predators. They're used to people being easy to move because everyone's attached to something. When they meet someone who seems genuinely willing to walk away from any table, they lose their usual leverage. The fourth weakness that gets detected is visible insecurity about status. Status is a game beneath the game in almost every social situation. Where you rank, where others rank, who has the right to speak first, who has to defer. Most people pretend status doesn't exist because acknowledging it feels ugly. But predators don't play that game. They see status dynamics clearly, and they pay very close attention to who's anxious about their position in the hierarchy. Visible status insecurity looks like this: name-dropping to establish that you know important people, over-explaining your credentials when no one asked, subtly putting others down to position yourself higher, laughing too hard at the jokes of high-status people while barely acknowledging lower-status ones, visibly tracking who has the room's attention and angling to get it yourself. All of these behaviors scream the same thing: I'm not sure I belong here, and I need you to validate that I do. That insecurity is like a target painted on your back. It tells predators you can be controlled through status threats, that you'll tolerate bad treatment from people you perceive as above you, that you'll be cruel to people you perceive as below you to feel better about yourself. Here's the deeper truth about status anxiety. It always betrays a weak identity. When you truly know who you are and what you're worth, you don't need constant external confirmation of your rank. You can talk to janitors and executives with the same fundamental respect because your self-assessment isn't dependent on where they fall in the hierarchy. You can let someone else have the room's attention without feeling diminished because your ego isn't fed by that kind of currency. This isn't false humility, it's genuine self-security, and it's rare enough that when people encounter it, they notice. The person without status anxiety moves through social situations like someone who owns their own kingdom. They don't need to conquer your territory because theirs is already sufficient. Predators read this posture, and again, they respect it strategically. Status-anxious people can be manipulated by offering or withholding social elevation. Status-secure people can't be bought that cheaply. They require actual value exchange, actual relationship, actual respect. Most predators don't want to work that hard. They're looking for fast leverage, not genuine connection. The fifth weakness that predators detect is emotional volatility. This is the inability to maintain psychological equilibrium when conditions change. Emotionally volatile people overreact to minor provocations, get too excited about small wins, crash too hard after small losses, and generally let their internal state be dictated entirely by external events. This volatility makes them predictable in a specific way. If you can control the stimulus, you can control their response. Think about what it means to be around someone emotionally volatile. You learn very quickly which topics set them off. You learn what kind of compliments make them glow and what kind of jokes make them shut down. You learn the exact temperature of their triggers because their reactions are so dramatic that the pattern becomes obvious fast. Now imagine you're not a friend trying to navigate this person's moods. Imagine you're someone looking to use them. You now have a complete manual for their manipulation. Push here for anger, pull there for compliance. It's almost too easy. Emotional volatility often comes from a deep pattern of externalizing self-worth. When your sense of yourself depends on what's happening around you, you're going to be destabilized by anything unexpected. Good news makes you briefly feel like a god because your identity has no stable floor to stand on. Bad news makes you feel worthless because your identity has no stable ceiling either. You're essentially at the mercy of circumstance, which means you're at the mercy of anyone who can influence circumstance. This is not a powerful position. This is not even a safe position. It's a vulnerable position that advertises itself with every emotional spike. The opposite of emotional volatility is not emotional numbness. It's emotional regulation, the ability to feel things fully while choosing your response deliberately. You can be angry without lashing out. You can be disappointed without spiraling. You can be excited without becoming manic. This regulation comes from having a strong internal reference point, a clear sense of self that doesn't get blown around by every gust of circumstance. People with emotional regulation are hard to manipulate because their reactions can't be reliably triggered. You can't jerk them around by manufacturing crises or offering highs. They stay centered. They stay dangerous in the way that calm, thinking opponents are always dangerous. The sixth and final weakness that predators detect instantly is the inability to hold tension. This is perhaps the most underrated weakness on the list, and it's one of the most revealing. Every social situation contains moments of tension, silences that feel uncomfortable, questions that don't have easy answers, conflicts that haven't been resolved, moments where the outcome is genuinely uncertain. Most people cannot tolerate this tension. They rush to fill silences. They give away concessions just to end negotiations. They apologize for things that weren't their fault just to make awkwardness go away. Every time they do this, they show predators exactly what it cost to make them surrender. Watch what happens in a pause during a negotiation. Two people discussing terms, and then silence. Most people cannot let that silence breathe. They start talking, usually against their own interest. They justify their position when they didn't need to. They offer compromises that weren't requested. They essentially negotiate against themselves because the discomfort of not knowing was too much to bear. The person who can hold tension, who can sit in that silence without flinching, controls the frame of the entire interaction. They force the other person to break first. They communicate that they're comfortable with uncertainty, which signals psychological strength in a way that words never could. Inability to hold tension shows up in countless other scenarios. In arguments, it looks like backing down before you've actually been convinced just to end the conflict. In seduction, it looks like over-explaining yourself or rushing physical escalation because the ambiguity of mutual interest is too uncomfortable. In leadership, it looks like making premature decisions just to give people certainty, even when the right move is to wait. All of these behaviors reveal the same thing. This person's need for resolution is greater than their commitment to the right outcome. That's a lever that can be pulled. That's a weakness that can be exploited. The capacity to hold tension is developed through practice and philosophy. The practice is simple. When you notice yourself wanting to fill a silence, speak just to ease discomfort, or concede just to end conflict. Pause. Don't act. Sit in it. Let the tension exist. Notice that it doesn't actually kill you, that you can survive uncertainty without immediate resolution. The philosophy is understanding that tension is not your enemy. Tension is often where the most important information lives. The moments when things are unresolved are the moments when you learn the most about other people and about yourself. Running from tension means running from insight. Let me tell you something about the predators we've been discussing throughout this video. They are not fundamentally different from you. They're not a separate species. They're people who, somewhere along the line, learn to pay very close attention to how others leak information. Some learned this through traumatic childhoods, where reading a parent's mood was a survival skill. Some learned it through professions that reward social manipulation, sales, seduction, politics. Some learned it simply through being observant in a world that rewards observation. The point is that their skills are learnable, which means their perception can be anticipated, which means their targets can stop being targets. Every weakness we've covered today has the same underlying structure. You have an internal need that you haven't fully made peace with, the need for approval, for certainty, for status, for outcomes, for emotional equilibrium, for resolution. That unresolved need creates a pressure inside you. That pressure leaks outward through your behavior in ways you don't consciously control. And predators, people who watch closely for exactly these leaks, read the pressure and know where to push. The solution in every case is the same. Develop such thorough self-knowledge and self-acceptance that your needs stop leaking. Not by pretending you don't have them, by actually resolving them internally so they don't control your external behavior. This is why the ancient philosophers talked about self-mastery as the foundation of all power. Not because they were moralists trying to make you behave, because they understood that a man controlled by his own unexamined needs is a man easily controlled by anyone who identifies those needs. External freedom starts with internal freedom. External power starts with internal resolution. You cannot project consistent strength if you're running from internal weakness. The work, the real work, happens inside before it ever shows outside. Let me leave you with a thought that might reframe everything we've discussed. The goal is not to become impervious. The goal is not to become so guarded that no one can ever reach you. That's its own kind of prison. The goal is to become someone whose openness is chosen, not automatic. When you've done the internal work, you can choose when to be vulnerable and with whom. You can choose when to reveal and when to conceal. You can choose when to let someone in and when to keep them out. The difference is that now it's a choice, not a compulsion. You're not leaking, you're communicating. There's all the difference in the world between those two things. The people who will be most affected by this video are not the ones who think it doesn't apply to them. It's the ones who feel uncomfortable right now because they recognize themselves in what I've described. If that's you, if you saw yourself in the approval hunger, the inconsistent frame, the overinvestment, the status anxiety, the emotional volatility, or the inability to hold tension, good. That recognition is the first step. Most people live their entire lives leaking weakness without ever realizing it. You now have information they don't. What you do with that information is up to you. But let me be clear. Knowing this and doing nothing about it is worse than never knowing. Because now you're choosing to stay vulnerable. Now it's not ignorance. It's neglect. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember that the most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest or the most aggressive. It's the one who sees everything, says little, and never reveals what they've noticed until it serves them to do so. Your job is not necessarily to become that person. Your job is to stop being readable to that person. Everything else follows from there.